I get this question a lot when financial advisors learn that in my career, I went from being last place in production at my nationwide firm, eventually to first place and number one nationally. The question I get is, what did you do? What were the scripts that you used? What was working for you? We're going to talk about that today because the way I look at it now, I will admit there are many ways to get to success in our business. There's many ways to acquire clients, but I've been around the block for 40 years in this industry. I'm just going to share with you what I believe. I believe lead generation is not a script, but lead conversion could be a script. Lead conversion, the stakes are high. I'm going to break it apart for you so that we dissect this in a way that makes perfect sense to you, what I'm saying, because I think it is at the heart of production. I think what I'm going to go through in this video is really going to deconstruct our business in a way that hopefully will make sense to you and will help you acquire clients. All right. So I say this a lot in my videos. So if you've heard me say this before, my apologies, but I'm going to go through it again because I think it is so fundamental to what we're talking about. If you are a financial advisor, I don't care what that means to you. In my case and in our company, the financial advisors that we work with are all delivering what I describe as truly comprehensive financial services. But you might be listening to this. You're in a professional services business. Maybe you're a certified public accountant. Maybe you're an estate planning lawyer. Maybe you own a property and casualty firm. But you think of yourself as, yeah, broadly, I'm a financial advisor. So if you're a financial advisor and you're in charge of both client acquisition and client service, which is to say, you're responsible for bringing new clients in and you're then responsible for client retention to some extent. If you're responsible for both of these things, then what I am about to tell you applies. In that situation, there are three skills that you need to master: lead generation, lead conversion, client service. Now, I do it this way because what I want you to think of is a Venn diagram where you've got these circles, and then where the circles overlap, there's an area where the three of them exist together. That's the business I'm describing. So if you're responsible for new client acquisition and you're responsible for serving clients over time, where the Venn diagram that I just described, where they all overlap, that's you. So you're responsible. I'm going to define these terms. Lead generation is a skill that you master for having enough people to sit down and talk to. If you're not sitting down with enough new people, let's call them potential clients, then you need work on lead generation. You've mastered lead generation when you have ample people to talk to. You could talk to people every day if you wanted to. They are potential clients and they are willing to sit down with you and talk face to face about business. There's some other elements to lead generation, which we talk about in these videos, but it has to do with qualifying potential clients so that which in my world is, we would have you develop an ideal client profile. So then in the lead generation process, you need to master, how do you determine if someone that you're talking to, a potential client, actually meets the ideal client, which is just another way, your ideal client profile, which is just another way of saying this individual is already looking for what you do. Your lead generation process is simply there to align the two things. They're looking for someone just like you. Lo and behold, that's your ideal client profile. You serve the client like that beautifully. So that's lead generation. That does not involve a script. In my world, that involves building relationships. This is where you work among the community of potential clients in your market. You do marketing. Marketing is your effort to make sure that people who meet your profile out there in the community, people that you don't even know yet, that they have a way of knowing your name, knowing what you do, knowing that you're different and better. Marketing is all about reputation. It's a plan you put together so that before you meet them, they've heard of you. That's all part of lead generation. But where the crux of it is in lead generation, it's your ability to identify issues that they need help with that are in your wheelhouse. Start doing the qualifying, making sure that what they're looking for is what you do. And then you have ample number of people that you can elevate to the next step, which I'm calling lead conversion. So you've generated tons of leads, you've mastered lead generation. And my way of thinking of it never involves scripting. It involves building relationships with other human beings. Lead conversion, however, is an event. I call it the initial client interview. In our business, you've generated leads. You've gotten to the point where you've more or less qualified the individual or the family. So you've established in their mind that there's enough of a good fit that what you do is what they're looking for, that you elevate the relationship to the next level. It's the lead conversion process. Now, many of you have different lead conversion processes. I've seen quite a few over the years. Many of them work, but some of them are better than others. I'll tell you that. Some lead conversion processes, after a lead's identified, they move into the lead conversion process. And some of these processes that I've seen with successful financial advisors may be effective, but they're grueling sometimes and often very tedious. So what I mean by that is I know a guy that has a 7-figure business. He's growing. He's got a revenue of 7 figures, heading to 8 figures. So pretty much every financial advisor that I work with is a 7-figure business or 8 figures. I talked to this guy, asked him what his lead conversion process was. After he described it, I said, "Is that effective?" He said, "Yeah, very effective." It's a 3-meeting process where they meet with the client 3 times. They go through a series of questions. There's a process that's apparently quite effective, where they narrow down what's going on. And you could think of it as a fact-finding process, coincided with an enrollment process. But regardless, if a potential client is strong enough to make it through 3-hour sessions over multiple days, then it's apparently very effective. He was telling me that he acquires at least one ideal client for every 10 of these that he conducts, which in our industry is good. That's average. So if it's less than 1 out of 10, then it's a problem. It's not working. But to my way of thinking, that's grueling. So what I was confronted with, this is going back 25 years ago, is what does an effective lead conversion process look like? It should be compelling to them. So my only beef with the process I just described is it's all about the advisor and it's all about the advisor's process. Granted, if the client's motivated enough and their problem is significant enough, or the issues that they're dealing with are enough of a problem or significant financial issue in their mind, then obviously they're willing to go through the gauntlet that is the lead conversion process for that advisor. So they do it. What I was thinking is, could you flip that around? Is it possible that since I have unlimited leads, I'm really good at lead generation because I've mastered that. Once I get them to the lead conversion process, what could it look like? What should it look like? Is there a way to streamline it? Is there a way to make it compelling for them? Is there a way to make it so valuable that when they leave, they tell me, "Wow, this was an extraordinary process. I really appreciate you taking me through this, and I gained a lot from this process." Even if we don't work together, my question in my head was, is there a way to conduct the initial client interview in a way that's lean and streamlined so that we don't have to have 3 meetings, but we can get to the nub of it in 1 meeting? That in say an hour's time, I could sit down with a couple, I could go through the process, I could create an extraordinary client experience so that it's compelling for them, even if we don't end up working together, because it ends up not being a good fit. What I do is not precisely what they are looking for and what they need. So I send them on their way. But as they leave, they say, that was worth it. That was extremely valuable. So much so, I'd pay money for that. I came up with a checklist. There's a 15-point checklist that we work through with our clients. I've done another video on this, but when I say my clients, I'm talking about financial advisors who we mentor and coach. We're a consulting and training firms for financial advisors. Oh, by the way, I'm still a financial advisor. I'm a financial advisor who achieved success, and I just train what I've done. I train what I implemented. But when it comes to lead conversion, there's a specific process that can be quite compelling, so much so that I charge $500 for that meeting, and I have for over 20 years. So when somebody comes to me, I'm generating leads, I'm pre-qualifying them, I'm trying to determine is what their issues, is that what we do? And it looks so much, enough so to sit down and talk. So we schedule an initial client interview. I book it for an hour. The goal of that hour is it's compelling. They will gain tremendous value. And even if it ends up that it's not a good fit, then they'll leave happy that they had the experience, even though they're paying me $500. So I charge $500 for that initial client interview. There's reasons for charging. I should create another video on how to set the fee and why it's smart to charge. But whether or not you charge is not the issue. The issue is, can somebody leave your lead conversion process with enough value that they would have paid you? That's the key to what I'm saying. So what we do is we sit down with every financial advisor and we go through the 15 essential elements of an effective lead conversion process. Now, I don't have time to go through them here. If you look at other lead conversion videos, I have gone through the critical elements of those 15, and I do walk through those. The point I wanted to make in this video is that lead conversion might be a script. Why? Because if you're going to create an extraordinary client experience and you're going to compress it, because you don't want to have 3 meetings over 3 days with a client. And this guy said 1 or 2 of his meetings could go 90 minutes. So I didn't want a 3 or 4 hour lead conversion process over multiple days. It started more as a question. It started more as a challenge. Could I establish a lead conversion process where they come in for about an hour, they leave about an hour later, they have an extraordinary client experience, and if they fit the profile, we identify it within an hour. That if, as we're going through, it is a good fit, that as we get into it, it turns out that what they are really seeking, the issues they're trying to resolve, the objectives they're trying to set for themselves financially, are in my wheelhouse, and it turns out that it's a perfect fit. Then could I create a lead conversion process that's done in an hour? At the end of the hour, one way or the other, and you're certain about it. But if it's not a good fit, that you leave happy that you went through the experience and there was a payoff. In my case, what I promise people, whether or not we end up working together or not, that they will have a breakthrough of clarity in that hour, and they'll walk away with knowing precisely what the next step should be given their situation. So I make it the work product of that lead conversion process to get down to what would be the most obvious, most relevant, most important next step, given whatever their significant financial issue is that we're sitting down talking about. So to do all that in an hour, that required scripting for me. It requires hiring a business consultant. It required going through the 15 essential elements of an effective lead conversion process. And to squeeze all that in, deliver it in an extraordinary way, required mapping and framework of that meeting, and it required scripting. So when a younger advisor comes to me and says, "So you were number one top producer nationwide at your firm. What scripts did you use? How did you approach new potential clients?" I think they've got it wrong, because the lead generation phase, just to back up from lead conversion, like when you first, how do you meet people? How do you get to know them? It's this whole process where people get to know you somehow, often through referral. How do they get to the point where they like you? They have developed a relationship where they actually like you, and over time, somehow you've created trust. And trust is funny, because trust is one of these things that it's hard to give freely at a beginning of a relationship. It's actually earned over time. So, is there a way to conduct lead generation and lead conversion in a way that fosters the greatest amount of trust? It presents what you're doing in a way that doesn't seem like the average financial advisor, which I've seen the data. What do affluent, successful people think when they think financial advisor? They think ulterior motive. The financial advisor is talking all this financial stuff, and some of it's language and terms that I'm unfamiliar with. It's financial vernacular, and they recommend something to me. Now, all of a sudden, I'm in a position of with someone I don't know very well and I don't trust yet because they haven't earned it. But I'm having to decide, are they recommending this recommendation because it's good for me? I hope so. Or are they recommending this because it's good for them? Is this what they always recommend because it's an ulterior motive? They have a sales process and I'm just going through their process. I pop out on the other end with a recommendation that's not based on what I need. It's based on, I don't know, some sort of compensation to them or something like that. And that's what the data says. By the way, I'm not saying that's true. What I'm saying is, when you look at data of how potential clients are thinking about our industry, how potential clients think about us, they are wondering whether you have ulterior motives. So that's why when I was in my 20s, I don't know how I stumbled across this, but I recognized that lead generation and lead conversion are two separate things. Lead generation is all about, as quickly as possible, building a relationship of trust so that I have ample people every week that are willing to sit down with me one-on-one. This is scheduling a lead conversion meeting or process, so that now we're face to face. I'm sitting in front of someone who could say yes or no. They could say yes to hiring me or no to hiring me. As I'm going through that process, I've done it so well, it's fosters as much trust as you could foster in a 1-hour meeting. So between lead generation, developing the initial relationship, and sitting down in the lead conversion process, developing trust, that's the process. So in lead generation, there's no script. Lead generation is about developing relationships. Lead conversion, however, is like a movie script. If you've ever seen a fabulous movie, by the end of the movie, I'm always crying, but I'm thinking they're just actors. They're just reading lines. The issue with lead conversion is it could involve a script. It did with me, but only because I wanted to fit so much into a 1-hour meeting in a way that was authentic, in that there are no ulterior motives. The truth descends very naturally at the end of the meeting. If what the client is looking for is perfectly aligned with what we do, I want to make that case in a compelling way so that the client notices that it's a good fit. It's not me recommending so much to the client. It's more that the client recognizes over the course of the hour that this is a really good fit. Like, this is the advisor we've been looking for. And in that world, that required scripting, because there's so much to master. There's so much to condense into a short period of time that I couldn't rush through it. I couldn't just wing it. The one thing that I've noticed over the years on that lead conversion process, even for highly successful advisors that have big growing businesses, there's many of them are just winging it. in this lead conversion process that they've developed. One thing I learned over the last 40 years, if you will not use scripts when you're in the lead generation phase, but you will consider scripting yourself or at least creating a very strong structure and framework, delivering an extraordinary experience, which I've come to believe I think it will require a script. And if you're open-minded enough to go through your process and go through the 15-point checklist to make sure that you're effective, you're giving them everything they're looking for out of this meeting. Yeah, I think you could do that. I think it's for financial advisors delivering comprehensive financial services, it's for sure. You can generate leads, more leads than you can handle on an unlimited basis, but that's lead generation. It's a separate skill. When it comes to lead conversion, then when you move people into the initial client interview, now you're faced with the lead conversion process. Is it possible for a potential client to just spend an hour with you? Both of you determine that by the end of that hour, that this is going to be a really perfect fit. You get it done in an hour and they have a compelling experience. Everybody gets what they want. So what were my ratios? After I dialed all this in, my ratio is 2.44 to 1. So a little while ago, I said my benchmark for talking to other financial advisors about their lead conversion process is just to ask quite simply, for every 10 potential clients that you take through your lead conversion process, how many become not just a profitable non-ideal client, but an ideal client? How many lead conversion processes do you need to conduct until you yield at least one ideal client? I think if you're doing better than 1 out of 10, you're at least on solid ground. My numbers were 2.44 per month. And the ratio was for every 7.8 lead conversion processes, I yielded one ideal client. So a little better than 1 in 10 out of every, let's call it 8 lead conversion processes, I yielded an ideal client. Of course, because you're talking to a lot of people, you will also identify profitable non-ideal clients along the way. So that's really all I wanted to cover. Lead generation is not a script. Lead conversion could be, I would say, should be a script if your goal is to master a very tight process that is streamlined and doesn't drag out for days. Yet, when you're sitting in front of someone who's a good fit, they fire their advisor on the spot and hire you. Yes, you can do that. And that's my advice to you. Really master a process for creating an extraordinary client experience in your lead conversion process.